Right, so we're going to go through how to action using a commercial default checklist when working on a commercial default. Um, as previously mentioned, most of these first headings here are going to be applicable to a lot of different types of listings, but we'll just go through them again. We want to make sure the creditor is operational, hasn't gone into liquidation, so we can still reach out to them instead of reaching out to a credit reporting bureau. Moving along, we want to see if the account is a result of fraud or identity theft, and also if the client had experienced domestic violence, which led to the listing. If any of these are applicable, there is paperwork that we get the client to fill out from within our systems. So when we do contact the creditor for the first time, we can raise these issues. Moving along, we want to see if the creditor has accepted our privacy consent form, and then we can continue on from there. At this stage, we want to see if the creditor has provided all of the documentation that we've asked for. As you notice here, if you looked at consumer default checklist, it doesn't reference anything to do with the guarantee indemnity. It's just something else that's asked for to do with like businesses and whatnot that are applying through the commercial default. So moving along into the next section here, we want to see if the debt is statute barred. And in here, there's a link to see different states have different rules. So there'll be limitations on when the creditor can collect. And we want to see if this is applying for a secured debt, which would be legal avenues of being able to ensure that the client is still liable to make payments and they're able to still legally collect. We want to have a look to see if the client provided consent through the application, signed off on everything when applying. We also want to see if the creditor has made collection attempts to the company. So as it is a commercial listing, there'll be a business address under the business name, and there'll also be the individual's residential address. Most of the time they're different. Sometimes they can be the same, but we want to have a look to see if notices that were sent out to both addresses that might be listed. This kind of covers off that same point as I just explained. We want to see if it's going to a business address. COVID-19, as it's halfway through 2026, it's not awfully common, still can be. But obviously just want to see if that was a contributor to the client's business closing down or if they were affected financially in any way as a result of that. This one's pretty straightforward. We want to see if the default is more than $100 for the listing. And again, if we're looking at the notices, we'll just want to make sure that they're compliant within the dates that they've been sent out. And in this case, if they were sent to a residential address and a business address, if they're different, there's a hyperlink here which will explain that in a little bit more depth as well. We want to see if the client had made payment to the debt outstanding on the account and if it's been updated to reflect on the credit reports. And also within the 30-day period that a creditor has to send a response to us. We just want to see if they're outside of that when having a look at going through everything. In most cases, we won't be able to escalate to a legal ombudsman like AFCA and whatnot. Most of the time, that won't really apply, but it still warrants a follow-up anyhow through certain guidelines, which will still apply to commercial listings, and that will be outlined here in more detail in the hyperlink next to it. We also want to see if the client has signed a guarantee indemnity, which is that extra documentation I'd mentioned at the start when explaining how to action this. Let's see, the provider has sent notice to the individual or guarantor. So that's pretty straightforward as well. If there's someone that's a guarantor for the loan, and they've got a separate address, if they're still part of the business, but they're just at another address, we want to see where all the notices and things to do with collections are being sent. So that's something that we assess to do with relative to the application and who's actually signed on for the application as either guarantor or owner of the main lender. We want to see also if the default was listed after a bankruptcy. So if there was somebody who'd gone into a bankruptcy agreement and it was listed after that, we want to have a look and see if should have been assessed to be included as part of that bankruptcy. Also, to check off to see if the client had suffered from circumstances beyond their control, hardship, or as we mentioned up here, COVID, things like that, natural disaster, a lot of things that could affect the client's business, if there's damage to certain equipment, machinery, or the property that it's set up at. Lots of different variables with that, and that'd be outlined a bit more in detail in this hyperlink here. And then financial hardship, it kind of just ties in to this one up here a little bit more as well. Certain other circumstances that could have affected their business. And that's pretty much everything to do with how to action a commercial default using this checklist.